Okay, I think we're going to get started. Thanks to everyone for joining us for this June edition of our science communication webinar. Today, we are going to hear from April Boggs Pope, and she is going to be talking to us about the impact of low head dams on fish community structure in the lower Little River. April, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make sure to keep from having any internet issues. I'll go ahead and take my camera off. Y'all won't need to see me for this presentation. So can everybody see this? See the introductory slide?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Right. So thank you, Heather. My name is April Boggs Pope. I'm the District 4 Assistant Fisheries Biologist with the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission. And today we'll be talking about the impact of low head dams on the fish community structure in the lower Little River. My coworker, Kyle Rachels, also helped out with this project. He did a lot of the legwork for this project. And to anyone who has attended the NCAFS meeting in the past couple years or so, you may have already seen this information, but I hope it'll be a good reminder of the fact that dams aren't always the trouble we might think they are. So for background, the lower Little River is a tributary of the Cape Fear River. It is a shallow stream in many areas with little boat access and runs through Moore, Harnett, and Cumberland counties, as well as through Fort Liberty, formerly known as Fort Bragg. It was stocked with spotted bass from 1978 through 1981 to increase sport fishing opportunities. Louder 1962 found multiple species of darters, bullheads, mad toms, sunfish, pickerel, and other species that we might not see as much anymore. Records and personal communication suggested that the stocked spotted bass might have been Alabama bass. So in 2021, we went out to get fin clips of these black bass to differentiate between largemouth bass and spotted bass, and to determine if the spotted bass might actually be Alabama bass. The last sport fish assessment of the lower Little River was conducted in 1992. Our objectives were to characterize black bass genetics, evaluate fish community structure, and to assess angling opportunities. Our methods included canoe electrofishing with the Smith Root Apex electrofisher. All fish were identified and measured for total length. Some fish were vouchered and preserved in ethyl alcohol for later identification. The black bass tissue samples, which included the fin clips taken from largemouth bass and spotted bass, were preserved in ethyl alcohol, and the data was analyzed using R and RStudio. We had 15 sample sites, which are represented by the orangish yellow dots on the screen. The sites were numbered going upstream from the Cape Fear River, which is to the right-hand side off of the screen. And that was where the lower Little River flows into the Cape Fear River. That would have been site 0. 87 was our most upstream site, and it was approximately 87 river kilometers from where the lower Little River flows into the Cape Fear River. Site 7 was our most downstream site. On the map, you can see there are some purple triangles, and those are the locations of some of the dams, several of which were located in Fort Liberty. So access and visitation by anglers varies. We sampled these sites in July and August of 2021. We used a cooler as our live well in the canoe, and we used a measuring board to collect length data. And you can see that we had a pretty good haul from this site. Whoa. That was not supposed to play. We measured water quality using a YSI meter, and the temperature was about 26 degrees Celsius. Dissolved oxygen concentration was fair at 6.3 milligrams per liter, and the concentration or saturation was 77%. Salinity was 0 parts per thousand, and conductivity was pretty low at 28 microsiemens per centimeter on average. We collected 417 fish of 30 species. And in this picture, you can see one of the dams that's around Fort Bragg. This was the dam that was at River Kilometer 52. And fish are not going to be able to go over this dam unless there's major flooding. Sorry, there's some recordings embedded. I did not notice. In this picture, we have a largemouth bass. We spent plenty of time staring at largemouth bass and spotted bass and looking at their mouths and their tongues and asking them, are you a largemouth bass or a spotted bass? And through that process, we were able to correctly identify all of the largemouth bass and spotted bass according to the genetic analysis. We collected 37 spotted bass, which was around 9.7 fish per hour, and 23 largemouth bass over the course of 3.8 hours of electrofishing effort. We collected and analyzed fin clips from 25 spotted bass and 22 largemouth bass. And here are a couple of pictures of some of the spotted bass that we caught. They're typically smaller than largemouth bass, but there was less of a difference in the lower Little River than there maybe would have been in the Cape Fear River, where some of the largemouth bass grew to larger sizes. And based on these fin clips, all 25 of the spotted bass were spotted bass rather than Alabama bass. So we can be thankful for that. All of the fin clips that were successfully analyzed from the largemouth bass were largemouth bass. So our identifications were solid. We did find that spotted bass were not found upstream of a partially breached dam at River Kilometer 64, which you can see is circled on the map. We did sample at River Kilometer 64, but we were only targeting catfish. At River Kilometer 63, where we did sample for largemouth bass, spotted bass, and other species, we started to see spotted bass as we downstream. And upstream of River Kilometer 50, there were largemouth bass, but it appears that spotted bass were outcompeting them in the lower stretches of the river to an extent where we did not find largemouth bass further downstream. And you can see the catch per unit effort on the left-hand side, where it shows spotted bass in purple, where they reach all the way up to River Kilometer 63, and largemouth bass from River Kilometer 50 to 87. And next, one of the very fun parts of the survey, really enjoyed seeing these native catfish that we don't always get to see. We have a snail bullhead to the left, tadpole mad tom in the middle two pictures, and the margin mad tom on the right. We caught 9 snail bullheads, 1 tadpole mad tom, and 1 margin mad tom. We did have one catfish site at River Kilometer 64 where low frequency electrofishing was used for 600 seconds, but that site was not included in the effort for other species. And no catfish were caught at that site, though they were observed quickly swimming away out of reach. So we were seeing catfish. They were just evading, as some of y'all know pretty well that catfish will do. We used high frequency electrofishing for all the other sites for an over total of 4 hours of electrofishing. We also caught non-native catfish. The catfish pictured are not the catfish that we caught in the lower Little River and are just examples. The picture on the left shows channel catfish, and the ones on the right shows a flathead catfish, and that's just an example of how large flathead catfish can grow up to be. And this one was taken from the Northeast Cape Fear River. The ones from the lower Little River were much smaller, and we did catch 4 flathead catfish. We also caught 16 channel catfish as well. And again, neither of these fish are native to the area, and we consider flathead catfish to be rather invasive. We found some differences in distribution across the river kilometers for catfish species. The orange line at 52 and also orange circle on the map represents the dam that was shown in the earlier picture that fish would not be able to get over unless there was major flooding. The partially breached dam was represented by the dark line and the dark circle at River Kilometer 64. Margin mad toms, snail bullhead, and tadpole mad toms were all found upstream of the dam at River Kilometer 52, which was the dam that fish are unlikely to pass. And you can see all this represented with the catch per unit effort graph on the bottom right. Channel catfish and flathead catfish were the only catfish captured below the dam at River Kilometer 52, indicating that the dam at River Kilometer 52 might be keeping those non-native catfish from moving upstream and eating or outcompeting the native species of catfish. As again, there are circles where the dams are located on the map, and a snail bullhead is pictured at the top right. Some of the other fish that we were finding included 5 species of sunfish. We saw plenty of bluegill and redbreast sunfish and saw them in approximately the same numbers, which was really cool to see since redbreast populations are not what they once were. We also caught dollar sunfish, pumpkin seed, and red ear sunfish in fewer numbers. Louder in 1962 did document blue spotted sunfish and banded sunfish, but we did not see those during our survey. And I feel like I have to give some honorable mentions because I am a sport fish biologist, but there are plenty of other species out there that we were seeing and can really appreciate the diversity that was in that river. We were seeing plenty of darters, suckers, and thin-lipped chubs, which are species that are still being described. It appears that the thin-lipped chub was also found mostly upstream of the dam at River Kilometer 52, but we know that correlation does not equal causation, and there may have been some differences in habitat, but it was interesting to note, and we did see plenty of this cool little fish, the thin-lipped chub. We're also catching plenty of shiner species along with the thin-lipped chub. So I included the video that you could see on the right, where one of the shiners is hanging out after we took some measurements. In the bottom left, if you look very closely, you can see a water snake poking its head out of the water, and it looks like it and Kyle are having a talk, and it's asking Kyle what he was doing there in his river. This is a river in a rural area where there is not a lot of boat access or public access, except for on Fort Liberty or along roads, where we spent a lot of time looking at sites, potential sites, and checking to see whether or not we could safely carry a canoe or a generator down the embankment, and plenty of times deciding, no, we can't, so we need to move on to the next site. So due to such issues, the lowest site that we could sample ended up being River Kilometer 7. Our results provide a glimpse of the impact that the presence of non-native and invasive species might have on native fish populations, and the benefit that existing dams can have in protecting native fish communities. There ended up being a line in the water created by that dam, the River Kilometer 52 dam, that was helping to keep native catfish species upstream and away from the non-native catfish species. So when we talk about removing dams, we also need to take into account the negative impacts that dam removal might have, along with considering the benefits. So in this case, we don't believe that dam removal is the best option for the dam at River Kilometer 52, as it's providing a good barrier between native catfish in the upstream sites and non-native catfish in the lower sites. In this picture, we have the partially breached dam that was at River Kilometer 64, where the truck was also in the sand in an earlier slide. Y'all know those fun field moments. We did have a few acknowledgments. Joseph Heisinger, Carl Kelly, the Auburn Genetics Lab, and Scott Loftus, who is able to get all of the fin clips to the lab. Were taken by myself, Kyle Rachels, and Carson Pope. And this work could not have been completed without my coworker, who isn't presenting right now, but Kyle did a good portion of the work selecting sites and getting the canoe set up, ready to go, and steering the canoe. And Kevin Dockendorf has also helped with the presentation at times and presented it at the National AFS meeting.
Thank you, April. Are you still going? Sorry.
Sorry. I do have, this is just the final slide. It's just a couple of pictures of the lower Little River and some plants. There was a crane fly orchid and some mountain laurel that, were out in this rural area. Pretty blessed to have this job and to be able to see all the things I can see in the river and not in the river. And if you have any questions about our work or anything in District 4, my contact information is at the bottom of the slide. And thank y'all for your time. And do y'all have any questions?
Okay, now I'll say thank you, April. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, please drop them in the chat and I'll monitor that and get those questions asked. While we're waiting, this was really interesting to think about, to remove the dam or not remove the dam. And I know we had this dam removal prioritization tool that's been talked about. Do you know if these kinds of surveys are taken into account in that prioritization tool?
Yes, we did actually, we were in contact about the dams, on the dam prioritization tool, like on the list, and we did recommend, for this dam to be removed from that list, and or at least to be noted that it was providing a good barrier. So to my knowledge, no removal efforts are going to be attempted for this dam after we've found out that it is a great barrier for those native catfish and largemouth bass.
Great, thank you. All right, Megan Davis has a question. She says, do you know of any dams that are slated for removal in the next 5 years? And if so, have these types of surveys been conducted in those areas?
I wish I did. Unfortunately, I do not. I don't have an updated list of dams that are slated for removal. But I'm sure there are other folks on here, and I can also get you in contact with some other folks who might know of dams that should be removed in the next 5 years. And I mean, sampling efforts are underway near some dams, but it really depends on the district and the access. I mean, a lot of these dams, we know that they might be impeding anadromous fish passage and things like that, and might be slated for removal. But um, looking for, non-native catfish and bass species is kind of a different story. So I think it really varies, and that's a good point that we should probably be checking out these dams really with a fine-tooth comb and seeing if they might be actually providing a benefit to the fish community.
Okay. Well, unless I see any other questions come in the next couple minutes. Oh, here we go. Since a lot of the publicity is around sport fish, how much effort or budget is typically allotted for these types of non-sport fish surveys in any given year?
So there is the aquatic wildlife diversity section of the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission. I know Brina Jones and Catherine DeVilbus were working on sampling for some of the non-game species in the Lower Little River in this area. Um, there are a lot of efforts out there to survey for non-game fish, but also, there's plenty of fish out there, non-game fish. But Brina and all the other folks with aquatic wildlife diversity do a great job of trying to keep up with all of that. I can't give you the effort or budget, but I know they're out there doing their best. When we were out there, we decided that we would net all the fish that we could, and try to get a ID on all of them, since, we were already shocking, and thankfully, uh, the canoe electrofishing did a great job of getting all sorts of species, and that's something that isn't always pursued in, coastal streams, the canoe electrofishing. And we've since moved on to raft electrofishing as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much, April. That was really informative. For everyone else, we're going to be back here the second Tuesday of July, same time, same place.